The following podcast contains spoilers and adult language. And, I don't know why, but all of a sudden I just really, really want some cake.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. Evil is coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this week we'll be discussing episode 6 of the second season of The Last of Us. The title of this episode is The Price. Before we get into our individual points and talk details of the episode, let's just do a quick rapid fire what we thought of the episode. I went first last week, so Steve, why don't you go first for The Price?
Okay, well, so The Price, I thought it was actually a very fair price.
Yeah, it was.
I thought that it's not like anyone overpaid anything. No, I mean, again, this is for an episode where there's not a lot of action. I basically say there's no action in this episode.
Right.
It was still just amazing stuff, and I think for a lot of the non-gamer folk, a lot of questions were answered. Mm-hmm. That we were wondering about, and specifically, about Eugene and what all went down with that. We get to see that. And then also, when Ellie told Nora, Nora told Ellie, all the bad stuff that Joel did to the Fireflies, and Ellie just looks back at her and goes, I know.
Yeah.
Now we find out, how is that possible? Well, here's how it's possible.
Right.
So yeah, so that and it was great, and the sequence with the dinosaur and the museum and all that is straight out of the game, and it's great in the game when it happens, and again, much later, in terms of where Ellie is in Seattle, you get that flashback, and again, it's just kind of nice because there's Joel, and you get to do stuff with Joel in the game for a little while, even though he's dead as a door now. Mm-hmm. So that was really fun. So yeah, I liked a lot of it. I think the acting was amazing. It was great to have Pedro back for one little episode here. Mm-hmm. And I thought that Catherine O'Hara was great in the one scene we got with her. Uh-huh. And so, yeah, I really, really like this. I think this is one of the better episodes of the season, without a doubt, just in terms of the drama and all that.
Agreed.
So, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed. How about you?
I loved this episode, and I think, I'll make my case for it as we go through our points, I'm sure. But for me, not only do I think, personally, it's the best episode so far of season 2, I would make I would lay down a wager on it being my favorite episode of the whole series so far.
Really?
And for lots of different reasons. I think too, I put a little note in my notes about talking about whether or not I thought this was better than the Bill episode. Because that's generally considered by lots of people as that's probably the best episode of the series prior to this. But I think one of the things that this episode had that the Bill episode did not, which is we know these people, and there's a lot of the emotion is so much more stark in this episode because we are so invested. Plus, in the Bill episode, we don't know what their fate is. In this one, we do. So knowing that Joel dies gives you this extra level of, of just emotion for the whole episode. You're happy to see, Pedro in the episode again because he's great, and anytime he's in the episode, he elevates it, and he brings so much. But there's also the emotionality of okay, well, I'm glad to see him, but it just means it makes it that much more bittersweet because he's gone. I loved it. I loved all of the questions that were answered. I loved all of the themes that were explored. I loved so much about this episode. I even liked Catherine O'Hara, and I've talked in previous episodes about not really warming to Gail, but I think one of the things that's interesting is for me not liking her character so far, with some of the things that I haven't liked that her character has done. I still, in that moment, I had so much emotion and so much empathy for her in that moment, just based on the work that Catherine O'Hara was doing in that scene, when Eugene is brought back. So I mean, really sort of like top to bottom, it was just so well constructed. I loved the idea of revisiting, jumping through time via the birthdays and having that, and it's such a really great way to mark how things sort of change over the years. And I just thought it was wonderful. It's wonderfully crafted. The actors are at the top of their game doing stuff in this episode. The writing's beautiful. The directing was beautiful. And like you said, not a lot of action, but still, like, so much was accomplished, really, in forward moving the story in a lot of ways. So I loved it. I can't wait to talk about, like, my individual points, but kudos from Diana. So let's get going with our points on the episode. First up, let's discuss the episode description for episode 6. So, Steve, why don't you go ahead and take that away?
All right. Well, the episode itself is episode 2.6. The price is right. No, it's just the price. And the description that we have, as sparse as it is as follows. Joel surprises Ellie for her birthday. Years later, Ellie prepares to confront Joel about her past. And yes, those things did happen. So that is your episode description.
I would say Joel surprises Ellie for her birthdays, because it feels like...
Yeah, it'd be like... And then does it again and again and again. Yeah. Because, we see multiple birthdays. Yeah. We see 15, 16, 17, so...
Yeah, pretty much every year it looks like he tried to come up with something, whatever it was, sort of, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so, so before we get into our individual points, let's also discuss writer and director for the episode.
All right. Well, our...
Sorry.
I just heard a door open, so...
We're safe. Sarah showed her face and then made a face and then went away.
Okay. So our writers this time, it's not just Craig Mazin, people. There's actually other writers this time.
It's a crew.
And it is. It's a trio, if you will. And the writers for this episode are Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, and Haley Gross. So, which, it's not surprising at all, because, again, a lot of these sequences are straight out of the game that Druckmann and Gross wrote for part 2, so I'm sure they wanted to have a hand in telling, the dinosaur scene and the scene on the porch and all that stuff. So, but again, I've talked about all three of these people for a while now. You should know who they are. Again, Mazin is Mazin. He's, writes most of the TV stuff. He's the TV guy. Druckmann and Gross work for Naughty Dog. Neil Druckmann came up with the whole idea for this universe and game in the first place, and the two of them wrote the game story for part 2. So that is your writers, and then your director this time around is, and it's someone new for us, and that it's Neil Druckmann.
Yeah, it's great. And it's actually his second time directing me. There's a lot of information after the episode where he talked about, he was so nervous about doing this first episode last season, but because of that, he learned so much and was able to apply it to this one. And it feels like a really good fit that he would direct this one, because they drew so much from the game and didn't have a lot of action happening, but more information and situations and stuff like that. So this was a really good fit. I thought it was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I did too. I thought he did a really good job. So that is your writers and your director.
So this cold open scene is so well crafted and so beautifully done, with Joel and Tommy, and then he sends Tommy to go hide in his room, and then their dad comes home. And, I paid attention during the casting phase of when they were getting ready to film season 2, just a little bit here and there. I mean, like I said, I didn't want spoilers. So I knew about Catherine O'Hara. I had heard later about Joe Pantoliano playing Eugene, and, little things here and there.
And you heard about Jeffrey Wright?
Yes, and Jeffrey Wright. But I don't remember them mentioning Tony Dalton. I don't at all.
No, they did not. That was surprise casting.
It was fantastic. He walks in the door, and I was like, he looks kind of like, is that kind? I think, and I'm like, son of a bitch, is that Lalo Salamanca up there? And it was.
Yes, it is.
And I thought he was such a great choice. He really was. And how much does he? I mean, just like they did a good job casting wise in terms of like look. Like he looks like he could be if you took adult Pedro and adult, who's the actor that plays Tommy?
Who plays Tommy?
The one from
Andor.
I
can't remember.
Diego Luna. Diego Luna.
Yeah.
If you put all three of them together, they would look related, especially Pedro.
I would think so.
Especially Pedro and Tony. And I mean, is there anything in the game that mentions Joel's dad, Joel and Tommy's dad, like other than like maybe in stories? But is there anything? Or is this all a new scene?
All a new scene.
What did you think of it?
Yeah.
With no.
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, and just providing context, kind of setting up, for how this is going to go forward, and yeah, I mean, that actor is so amazing. He was so great on Better Call Saul, and he was also really great in the Hawkeye Marvel series. If you saw that,
I didn't, but that's great to hear.
Oh, yeah, he plays like Haley Steinfeld's like stepdad, and he's awesome in it. He's just so great because that guy's just really good in a lot of stuff, right? I mean, very talented dude. But yeah, as soon as he showed up, I was just like, well, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
And they have that. I mean, that whole sequence is just so, you're watching, and he's kind of having this moment with this, and he goes and he gets the beer, and like the whole time I'm like waiting for him to just backhand it.
I know, but that was why the scene was so well crafted. Was just the tension was like on the edge of a knife. I was so waiting for it. It was just so like it was the air was like choked with it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's particularly when he tells the story about how when he was a kid, he stole a candy bar, and his grandfather, made him take it back and apologize to the cashier. And then literally said, well, as soon as they got home, he was getting out of the car, and his grandfather just cold cocked him and breaks his jaw. Right. And like his blood everywhere. He's like, your grandma thought I was dead, all this stuff, right? And he talks about the humiliation of his jaw was wired shut, and everybody knew why, and what it and all that. And when he's telling that how like his dad kind of diffused the situation and then hit him anyway.
Right.
And the whole time you're just like, watch out, Joel.
Yeah. Here it comes. Here it comes.
Yeah, but instead he goes and he gets a beer for his I'm guessing like 15-year-old son, and they kind of sit there and have a couple sips, and he tells this whole story, and then he finishes it up, and I wrote the line down, and his dad tells him, okay, yeah, I've hit you and I've hit Tommy, but never like that, like how his dad, broke his jaw, is what he's saying. He said, not even close. I mean, maybe I go too far. I don't know. I don't know, but I'm doing a little bit better than my father did, and when it's your turn, I hope you do a little bit better than me.
Yeah.
And then he just gets up and he leaves him there, and you're just kind of left with this like, wow,
Yeah.
this, uh, it's a very, very powerful scene, and it's quick. It's not long.
And I love like the little exclamation point at the end of the scene. When you think, you're like, oh my God, that says so much about him and what kind of parent, Joel becomes, et cetera, and how his anger issues and things like that. And then it explains so much about him, and you think, you're like, okay, great, I got this emotional explanation. And then as his dad is leaving and puts his hand on his shoulder, and you're like, that's the fucking watch. And then that makes, and when it comes to stuff like that, like a watch that's important to someone, you would assume that it was like a family member's or a thing, but we just didn't get a story about it, so you just had to assume that the watch just had special purpose for Joel for some reason. Because it's got kind of a vaguely military look to it, I just always thought in the back of my head, he got it from someone, who he was in the service with, or he got it while he was in the service, and it reminds him of like, whatever. So I just always attributed it to that, and I wasn't sure I needed to know, but it just adds another layer. He may have had all of this anger and resentment towards his dad, but he wore that damn watch even when it was broken. 40 years later, 45 years later, and it made it through an apocalypse. He's still wearing it when he died. It's incredible. I love when those things are done, and they just are. It's just so beautifully done. Oh, love it. Ugh.
Yeah, and for me too, the end of the scene when his dad gets up and just kind of walks down the hallway. I just the sound design of the footsteps I thought was really good too. Mm-hmm. Just I don't know, something about it. I just really liked how they did that. So an incredible way to open the show. Oh, yeah. And again, not in the game at all. So
just wonderful. And then we get the credits with another surprise.
Yeah, how about that? Pedro's back in the credits,
I know.
Baby.
And I usually forward through the credits, but I was doing something, and I just was like, I just played them regular, and I was like, oh, he's back in the credits. I was so happy to see it, and then he'll be on next week, and we'll cry again.
Yeah, he's back in the credits, and at the end when we see the two little things grow, and for all of last season there were two of them representing Joel and Ellie, and there was for season 1, episode 1, there was two of them, and then for the last couple, when it's just been Ellie, it's just been her, but this time he was back there too. So
for me, like, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't notice the words, because I think I was sort of like half paying attention to the credits, so I didn't see that his name was there. I saw the little figure thing, and that's what I was reacting to. As I was like, oh my God, Joel's figure is in the opening, like the images, and I was like, oh my God, he's back. And then again, next week, that the little image, it's just going to be Ellie again, or maybe we'll do something else with it. Who knows? We'll see. But I love when they do that stuff with credits. It's so smart. To make those changes. They used to do that for Game of Thrones as well, because theirs was like a map, and so it was like if they went someplace, you knew they were going someplace new if they showcased it in the opening credits. And I just think that that's really cool, because it's such the opening credits for this show, along with a lot of others, is so beautiful. Like the way they have all of the what's the word I'm looking for? It's the cordyceps, just growing, the fungus, as it were, growing, and you see growing, and you spewing and changing and all of that stuff. It's and it's just beautiful to watch. It's sort of like a bloom and blossom, almost like flowers, except it's death. So that's pretty cool. But it takes an extra special level of attention to detail and attention to the fans to do something like that, and I love it. So after the credits, we get into there's just a quick little scene where we see I think it shows them in their house first, sort of getting used to stuff or whatever. But the first scene that I really made notes on was when he went to the bar to work out his little trade with Seth. And I love it when he knocks on the bar and he's like, "Oh, new guy." He's like, "I've been here 2 months." Hello, I'm not.
Yeah, and he calls him Seth.
Yeah, he's
too.
like, "Seth, I've been here 2 months." But I love that. Ultimately we find out that he gets the cake through Seth. So I don't know if he bakes it or maybe his wife or someone does. But
someone in the kitchen,
yeah,
somehow, right?
So he uses Legos as currency, and I thought that was hilarious because it's true. Like, when you see, Ellie traded her Chucks for her boots for Chucks, and like people are trading like physical objects because there's no money anymore. You have to have like a thing.
It's all barter.
Yeah, it's all barter and trade. And there was just a couple of cute things in that scene when, Seth's like, I looked in those same houses, and he's like, how did you? And he's like, because I know where smugglers leave stuff. So he knew where to find.
And he's like, I'm a smuggler. I know
where to find things that are hidden.
Right.
And then, Seth makes the most obvious note about himself when he says he used to be a cop. And I was like, you don't say. You don't present as a cop. Lies.
Lies.
Yeah. No.
He said he was a cop in Milwaukee.
Yeah, which is weird because that actor is so New York. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's hard to lose like that, the mannerisms and the way he presents himself. He presents as like a cop from New York kind of thing, and he's just not. But I appreciate that they made it that he's not from there. That he, ended up in that area, fleeing wherever he's from, Milwaukee. I get it.
Right. Yeah.
So we get that scene, and then, which then leads to, he then gets, he's clearly bartering for the cake, but he also barters he gets a bone from Seth from the kitchen, and he uses that, and you see him crafting all the way down, and you're like, first of all, it was like, what are you making out of a bone? But then when it came right down to it, and he was using it as like an inlay piece, like real bone inlay for the guitar, and all of you see him sort of doing all the different work for the guitar. It's beautiful, all in service of like her birthday. And then when she comes home and we get the, she burned her arm scene, is so great. Just that whole scene. First of all, because she's like stoned out of her mind because she's on painkillers. When she admits, she's like, "Man, it smelled like pork."
That's right. I said, I looked at it, said, I guess I'm gonna do it, and I did it.
Yeah, and it was great too.
And then she's like, I pushed against it, and it was red, and it was melting. Yeah. And it smelled like pork. Yeah, it's just like, all right, calm down.
And of course, Joel was like, why did you let her do this? And Tommy's like, let her? And is
let her.
Hello? And of course, as he said, they've only been there for 2 months at this point. And he's like, let her. And Tommy's already of the mind that like, what do you mean let Ellie do something? Ellie's going to do what Ellie wants to do. It doesn't matter what anyone says. And Ellie wanted to burn her arm. Why? Because as she said...
Well, yeah. I mean, she's like, I'm so sorry, and she, like you said, she's obviously whacked out of her mind on the pain pills, and he's looking at her, and she just goes, I just really wanted to wear short sleeves again.
Which I think is just adorable. And so, like, you totally get it, Because she wants to be able to, it's short sleeves, but it's like, she doesn't want to answer questions anymore. She wants to be able to live freely. And to do that, and, both, like, Tommy and Joel know, so they understand, she's, for the benefit of the community, trying to cover it up. So it's for everybody, but also for herself. She's, I just want to wear short sleeves. Which is true, because it's, when it gets hot, you just want to wear... I imagine being forced to wear long sleeves. So...
all year round.
Gross. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's stoned, but when she wakes up the next morning and it's her birthday, and he surprises her with the cake, which is great. But the cake, of course, he's like, son of a bitch, Seth, I hope you're a better baker than writer, because the cake says happy birthday, Eli.
Eli, yeah, he kind of guessed on how to spell Ellie.
Yeah, because he just didn't know. They're new. There's a new people. So, Ellie.
Hey, they're new guys.
Yeah, so that scene was great. And then, of course, he gives her the guitar, and that just dovetails right into him playing the Pearl Jam song and singing. And I think Pedro Pascal actually can sing, because you can sort of hear it in the back of his voice. It's difficult to be someone who sings to sound like you don't know how to sing very well. And I think he was just trying.
I do it pretty good.
You are fantastic at it.
Thank you.
But you can tell that he's trying to he's holding back some of his singing, and he's not, he sort of leans into it a little bit, but he's never anything more than just I'm a guy who knows how to play guitar really well, and I know this song really well, but I'm not the best singer, so I'm just gonna sing from the heart, and whatever. But I think it sounded great. He sounded like a regular dude, just trying to sing a song or whatever. And Ellie obviously loves it. She's so touched by the whole thing. Yeah.
Hey, she said that it didn't suck.
Right. Absolutely right. And I think it's great because it's if they've been in the community for 2 months, then that means it's been, at this point, about a year that they've been together, Joel and Ellie. You've got to figure.
Yeah, probably.
Give or take a few weeks here and there. It's just an estimate. But if you think about their relationship in the beginning, and he's finally come through and is being the emotional guy and being caring and all that other stuff, and she's just always got that wall up. But to see her just sort of accept the love and the attention and the affection from him is just really nice, because they're both different people now, which is great to see. So, yeah. And then we go 1 year later, and that scene's great.
Right. We jump to the 16th birthday.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we get dinosaurs and space. Not in space, yes. Dinosaurs and space. So there's this museum location, and directly in front of it is this big dinosaur sculpture, dinosaur figure. And, Ellie is, of course, it was hilarious because she's like, is it a dinosaur? Because they're on their way to it, and she's like, what is it this year? What's the gift this year?
Is it a bow and arrow?
Yeah.
Is it a dinosaur? Is it a loiter of kittens?
And he's like, a loiter? It's a litter. And she's like, no way.
She's like, really? A litter? And he's like, yeah, but that ain't it.
Is it a convertible? Yeah. He's like, what are you going to do with a convertible?
What would you do with a convertible? Yeah.
So she's going through all these ridiculous choices, and one of them is is it a dinosaur? And he's like, no. And then they get there, and he's like, it is a dinosaur. And she climbs on the top of that thing, and she's like, and he's worried because he's like Daddy Joel. And he's like, oh my God, Ellie, be careful, be careful, be careful. And she's climbing and climbing and climbing, and she can't hear anything he's saying. She gets to the top, and she's like, I'm on a motherfucking dinosaur. And it's great.
Yeah.
And he's just looking up, and he can't help. He's grinning from ear to ear because it's exactly what he was hoping her reaction would be. And she can see in the distance, she's like, oh, there's a museum over there. And he's like, I know. He's all coy. I know what's over there. I know. I'm bringing
Well, he's like, yeah, if you don't kill yourself on the T-Rex, I'll take you there.
So they go there, and
I also like
too. Go ahead.
When she runs up on it, he goes, "So you like it?" And then she's just so excited. He's like, "Yeah, likes it."
Yeah, and they get inside the museum, and she's like, because he's trying to she was trying to ask about doing patrols earlier, and he's like, you got to learn, you got to get taught, you need to be patient. And then when they're going inside the museum, he makes a point. She's like, how long have you known about this place? And he's like, a few months. And I was saving it for a special occasion and figured this would be it. And he looks at her and he's like, see, patience, which I thought was fantastic. And then everything else that happens in the museum is just so beautiful and lovely to watch. Just the way he presented all of the space stuff, all of the, it just is so lovely. And he knows how much because she's always fascinated, like she can't fathom the idea of, like airplanes and like things in the air, like humans being able to move through the air just fascinates the hell out of her. She has no context for it. She's never seen anything about it. And and she's always been kind of like fascinated with like space travel, and this is like just such up her alley. So she, there's the display of like how the planets are set up, and there's an exhibit where you can just sort of like, you turn the wheel around and it shows how they all rotate around the sun. And it's, it's funny because like you and I, like, that rudimentary versions of that have been done at science fairs since the dawn of time. You've seen like people doing like the foam balls and like using wire hangers to have everything, make their own solar system. And this is just a beautiful, much larger version of that, but she's never seen a physical representation of the solar system like that, and is just like, her socks are literally blown off. She can't believe what she's looking at, and she loves all of it. So then to sort of pivot from that, and he's like, do you want to go to space? And she's like, you're kidding. And they turn, and it's a capsule from, and he says it's from Apollo 15, but of course the internet had to be like, oh, it's in a different museum somewhere else. And I'm like, oh my God, just live a little, people. So he's like, yeah, it's an actual used capsule, Apollo 15, 1971. And then he gives her a rock, tells her to break the window, get a helmet that she wants to wear. And they go inside, and then his final gift is fantastic. Just he searched high and low, and he got a tape with the audio of a totally different takeoff from, I can't remember what it was. It was a different Apollo mission.
It's Apollo 11.
Okay.
It's like one of the most famous clips because that's the first moon landing one. So.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I've heard that audio 1,000 times. Right. So yeah, yeah, he does. He's like, he hands her the tape, and of course she has a Walkman, because of course you do, and she listens to it and closes her eyes, and kind of, you can almost imagine that she's being launched into space. And again, she has this smile on her face that she is just having the greatest time ever.
Yeah, it's great too, because she's reacting to how much she loves it. I mean, the whole sequence where she's listening and is imagining, he tells her to close her eyes because it's better, and she's imagining the takeoff, and and they do like the lighting and stuff like that so that you can see what she's sort of picturing in her mind and all of that. It's just wonderful. And he's laying back just like her, but he's got his head turned, and when she's, finished or whatever, she unplugs, and he's like, so, you like it or whatever. And she's like, are you kidding me? She's so happy. She can't even really express herself. And then he turns his head up, and you can see he's got like one little single tear of happiness that sort of escaped his eye. And it's just beautiful because he's so happy in that moment that she's happy. My heart like probably grew like 10 more sizes in that moment, because it was just such a precious moment between the two of them. So wonderfully done. Did it
make you want to return all the gifts to Whoville?
Yes, it did. It really did.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a changed person because of that scene.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. So then we go ahead again. I think this time it's 2 years, because we go to 17?
No,
Just 1
no,
year?
we go to it's 1 year because it's 15 is the Eli cake, 16 is the dinosaur place, 17 is the you're doing all the teenager stuff at once birthday.
Yes, which is what I wrote down. uh
Yeah.
so yeah, so she was and to be fair, Joel did surprise her, but by surprising her, he really surprised her. He got home early.
Oh, he did.
She wasn't expecting him, and she's in her room. Uh, they only really had like their shirts starting to come off, but she and Kat, who we know from previous stuff that they dated for a little bit or saw each other for a little bit, and they're fooling around a little, and they're smoking pot, and she is literally tattooing Ellie as well. So it's like all of these things, and with the door shut and all that other stuff, which is, oh man, the way parents feel when you've got that door shut.
That door cannot be shut. What is wrong with you?
So yeah.
Right. Bad stuff happens when the door's shut.
So then from there you get this really great scene, where you see them starting to get into the like you said, that's exactly what Joel says, we're gonna get all the teenager stuff all at once, and there was this moment where he says experimenting with girls. And there were a couple of quips in the year previous when he made a comment about Jesse, when he was like, so are you and Jesse? And she's like, what? And he's like, you guys spend a lot of time together. Are you, do you like him? And she's like, no. And of course, since we know that she likes girls, we're just along for the ride for that joke. And he's just so, he doesn't know. He has no gaydar there. And he's like, do you know about, that was a great moment when he's like, do you know about the birds and the bees? And she's like, oh, like dicks and vaginas? And he's like, Jesus. Because she's just so much to handle. But now flash forward to this, and he says, you smoking pot and whatever. And he says experimenting with girls. And she's like, having sex and experimenting with girls. And she's like, we weren't having sex, and it's not an experiment. And she just like lets it lie there, basically saying like, I'm not trying something, I am this thing, which was really important. Basically saying I'm gay without saying I'm gay. And he's kind of rattled by that, and the whole scene in general.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, hilariously, the whole time, Kat's like, I'm just going to go. And then when she's like, actually, it needs a little more color and whatever. And he's like, leave. She's like, yep, I gotcha.
Well, first of all, he's like, she's 17, and Kat's like, yeah, I'm only 19. And then she's like, I'm going to go. Yeah. Because he glares at her, and it's like, kid, you're not going to win this argument. Just leave.
Yeah, exactly. You're not. There's nothing you can say here. You should just keep going.
Just keep going.
So Kat has already left, and it's just the two of them. And he makes a comment where he's like, "We'll talk about this later when you're yourself again." And he leaves and slams the door. And I wanted to comment on that just quite quickly, because that line has gotten a lot of kerfuffle online, because people are interpreting that as he's saying that her being gay isn't herself. Like, she'll, snap out of it, and we'll talk about this later. So there's people online that are like, oh, I didn't figure Joel is being homophobic and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, but that's not how I read that scene. I read that scene as, you're stoned and you're saying things, and it has nothing to do with Kat or fooling around with a girl. It's just fooling around in general. Parents are always freaking out once you start having sex. And so he's just saying, you're stoned and you're not yourself. So once you're not stoned anymore, we'll talk about this. And that's how I interpreted it. So I just think it's interesting that people took it that other way. I mean, I could sort of see how you could see it that way, but I I don't know. I took it as when he says you're not yourself right now, it's because she's stoned. What about you? Did you have any reaction to that when he said it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just kind of a combination of everything. I certainly didn't go immediately to the wow, Joe's a homophobe. For me, it was much more, like you said, you guys have been blowing weed. You're angry that I kind of crashed this little party here and kicked out your friend, and so you're just lashing out at me. And so let's have this conversation, when you kind of cool down a little, and we
Right.
can approach it rationally. That's how I took it.
Right.
I did not immediately go to the come on, man, be more understanding. No,
Right.
I think whether Kat was there or whether Jesse was there, he would have had the same reaction.
Yeah. And I think even if you interpret it that way, first of all, I know it's tough to do this, but you have to look at it from the lens of the world stopped evolving with like progressive thoughts and ideas like 20 years before this scene. So because society collapsed. So everybody sort of like arrested development of like their social feelings and morals and all of that stuff are based in that like 2003. So if Joel is hesitant to embrace Ellie being gay at first, I think it says a lot about how people grow, because even if that's what his intention was when he said that, I mean, 2 years later, he's knocking Seth down because he called her a dyke. You know what I mean? Like that's so he's clearly evolved in his thinking about that stuff. You know what I mean? He's ready to, it even if it makes it uncomfortable, because honestly, I think any parent is uncomfortable talking about their kids being sexual beings. So regardless of his comfort level, he still feels protective of her being treated appropriately, and also, he asks questions later about Dina and all that other stuff. You know what I mean? So if he's exhibited that he's grown. So I don't consider Joel homophobic at all, really. So I just thought it was interesting that, I saw the debate online and I was just curious what you gleaned from that scene. So yeah, but I like at the end of the scene he does kind of try and save everything by asking about he wants to see the tattoo, before he leaves. He wants to see the tattoo and the stuff, and then he's just like, okay, well, good night, and then leaves the room or whatever. And he says something about he said butterfly, and he's like, well, it's a moth. And then, why do you choose that? And she's like, I'm not sure, I about dreams. I've seen it in dreams, and I read about it in dream stuff or whatever. And so he puts that in his head, and he's like, right, change, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, and in my head I was like, I'm not sure the moth symbolizes change. I mean, sometimes it can, but I was like, I couldn't think of what it does symbolize, but I was like, I think he's thinking more like butterfly. So he was like, change, yes, I understand, I know what you're talking about, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
Because right after this, the next day, who's he go running to?
Oh yeah, he goes to see Gail. Before we do that though, can I put some thoughts in on some of this stuff too?
Oh
okay.
Yeah.
Going back to the dinosaur place, I really liked it when he asked her about Jesse and is there something there, and and she's just like no and all this, and he's like, I kind of have an eye for these things, and she's like, I really think you don't.
Yeah, that's a great,
which I thought was really funny.
Yeah, that's a great like we're in on the joke kind of moment. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and again, the dinosaur and the museum itself, identical. I mean, lifted directly from the game.
Really?
If anything, it's just more, and like my note was, It's like the weirdest museum ever because it's like a dinosaur / space museum. It's like, what? Who would ever build that? Because when they go in there, if I remember it right, there's like a dinosaur section in there first.
Right.
And there are like, the fossil exhibits that they look at, and you can kind of go up and you like examine them, and it's like, this is a stegosaurus and blah blah blah, blah, and they have all kinds of like prehistoric plants and stuff, and like they're fake but they look like the giant ferns and all that stuff, so
Right.
they go through that part first, and then they go into the space thing, and again, the solar system thing is there, and you can
Yeah.
crank the thing and watch it spin around, and you do all that, and then literally in the room with the capsule, you go around and there are exhibits all the way around that capsule that are like the different spacesuits that people wore back in the 60s, and they have like, there's Russian ones, and there's the Mercury ones, and the Gemini ones, and the Apollo ones, and literally you can break the glass of any of the helmets and take whichever one you want. It's not like it's just that one. Literally you get to pick.
Yeah.
And again, that whole sequence is straight out of the game, and I thought that was really great. And to be honest, like when I was playing the game and that happened, I'm like, this will be in the season. I just knew.
Yeah.
It's like, absolutely. Particularly if they were going to kill off Joel, it's like, yeah, absolutely, they will. They will absolutely put this in as a flashback.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so I really liked that. And then I also liked when they are leaving, and Joel kind of says, I'll put you on the patrol. I'll let you start the process once you've learned, once I've taught you how to do it, you can do it. And she kind of stops when they're walking back, and doesn't he say something like, this is really nice, we should do this more often?
Oh, yeah.
And she kind of stops, and she's kind of looking off, and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And then they kind of show what she's looking at, but I don't know if there's supposed to be moths there or what. It just looks like she's looking at the woods. So I'm not really sure what
it was
that is supposed to be.
It's fireflies. There were fireflies.
Was it the fireflies?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I saw like some stuff kind of dancing in the sun, the sunbeams that were kind of coming through the leaves and stuff, but yeah, I wasn't sure. But again, it takes you back to that. Clearly Ellie is still, even at that point, she's still trying to work out what happened in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And obviously the next year, when again, all of the bad stuff happens, and then he asks her about what's your fascination with the moths. And clearly, as we find out from Gail, clearly she is kind of put it together that the most likely outcome of what happened in Salt Lake is that in order to develop the cure, they were going to have to kill her,
right,
and he stopped them, and so she is like kind of fixated on death.
Yeah.
And so on. But yeah, again, the museum, the dinosaur, that's in the game. All the other birthday stuff we see is not. And then also, like, after like they talk about the moths and stuff, doesn't she like decide she's moving out in the middle of the night in the rain?
Yeah.
And he like hears her trying to get her bed out the door, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, I'm moving to the garage.
Right.
And he's like, not now, it's pouring rain.
Yeah.
And, there's no water out there. And eventually, though, pretty quickly he like tells her, you know what, you can move to the garage, just give me a couple days to kind of fix it up a little.
Yeah.
Kind of the whole, you'll get to give you your space kind of thing,
Yeah. And that's the scene where, like, to sort of diffuse the situation, that's when he was asking her about the tattoo, and then about the moths and the stuff like that at the end of that.
Is it? Okay. Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
So,
part, yeah.
So that then it cuts to, poor Gail is just like sitting in the restaurant, just like trying to eat her lunch and read her book, and Joel just strolls right up to her, and he's just like, hey, you guys like interpret dreams and such, right?
Yeah.
And I love it because she looks up at him and she goes, is there a Dr. Zinn sign on me like Lucy from the Forking Peanuts?
Yes.
Was so great. And then he just kind of looks at her, and she's like, yes, some of us do interpret dreams. And then he brings up the moth and says, is that's like change and such. And that's kind of how Joel talks. He likes to say and such a lot. And she goes, no, that's the caterpillar, the butterfly. That represents change. And he's like, well, what does the moth signify? And without even like slowing down, she's like, death. And then she looks at him and she goes, for people or death, if you believe in that shirt.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of got this look on his face, and then she goes, why? And he just gets up and leaves.
I know. And she just like, her reaction, she just like turns around and is like, what just happened? Why was I just assaulted verbally? And he wasn't mean or anything to her, but was just like completely oblivious to her surroundings, and that she was like, he had no social cues in that moment.
Yeah, right. None at all. Yeah. And also, I just would point out, I don't know if you looked into it, but the book that she's reading, it's this book called Earth Abides. And like a lot of the things that we've seen on the show, it's a real book.
Yeah.
And actually, it is a apocalypse book.
Yeah, they were talking about it a little bit in a featurette I saw. Yeah.
I believe on some streaming service there is a series that they are shooting of the story of that book. But it was like written in like the late 1940s, and it's this guy like goes out into the woods, and he's like, I can't remember if he's a scientist or he's just a hippie or whatever, but he's out there, and then when he comes back into town, like the town's empty, and then when he goes to his house, his like family are all dying of this mysterious illness that apparently has afflicted the entire world, and it's what happens. So it's definitely an apocalyptic story. Nice. That which is really interesting. It's really interesting that that's what she chooses to read in the apocalypse. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that it is not like they did not make up a fake paperback for her to read. That is a real story, that a real book that exists. Yeah. So but yeah, anyway, so so we have that, and we then finally jump to Joel shows up early in the morning, and this is 2 years later on her birthday. So now she would be turning 19.
Yes.
And he's like, your birthday present is you get to go on patrol.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic. And before he even gets there, there's a really great little quick scene where she is rehearsing some questions she's going to ask him about the Salt Lake City stuff. And that's really interesting that that's her headspace at the time, is that she's really come to grips with the fact that she really does not believe anything that he said about Salt Lake City, and has questions about, and it's great because her questions make sense. They're like, how were they able to see us from far away, but they didn't see raiders approach? And how, like, all of her things make sense, her questions she gets to. And she's in the middle of doing this. She's sort of practicing it. And then the door knock. There's a knock on the door. And it's I was going to say it's Pedro. It's Joel.
It's Pedro.
It's Pedro. And she opens up and she's like, oh my God. Like, what was I just doing? What if he hadn't knocked, if he'd just walked in? But anyway.
Right. Maybe she would have got an answer to her question.
Maybe. I mean, she does eventually. But yeah, so they go out on their patrol, and they get the call, and they have to go assist Eugene. Is it Eugene and Alan, I think they said? This the guy that was with him? Yeah,
they said, I can't remember. Yeah, it is. It's two other people. There's two people on the patrol. Yeah. It's Eugene and somebody. Yeah. I can't remember who they said it was, but they called in. They reported infected, and it was too much for them to handle. And so what is like the radio? The voice on the radio says that Joel is the closest one to them.
Yeah.
And we should point out that Joel has gotten like the easiest, most quiet patrol that they have for her first time. Yeah. Right. so she can, he wants to teach her. He wants to show her the ropes without them like running into anything, So
Yeah.
and it's very funny at the beginning because she's like, "Hey, what's the record for like most kills on your first patrol?" And he's like, "None," because this route is the most quiet one. We won't see anything. And she's like, "Ah." And then he tries to tell her like, "You pull out your binoculars. We have to be like, scanning both sides." And she's like, "Oh my God." He's like, "What?" She's like, "There's a small squirrel that's forking a big squirrel. We should probably report that." And he's just like, "Okay, let's stop with the binoculars for now."
Yeah.
So she's like smart ass Ellie now for the beginning of it, and he's just sort of like, will you take this seriously? And then boom, suddenly the call comes in and they gotta go, and like he wants her to go back and he'd go by himself, and she's like, "No, I'm your partner on this patrol and I will go with you." And he's like, "Okay." And so then they go and they look for Eugene, and finally we get an answer as to what happened to Eugene.
Yeah. So this wasn't in the game, you said, but so in the game, do they just
Right.
mention Eugene, like talk about him, and then you have no like there's no character of Eugene in the game, correct?
No, Eugene is already dead when the game starts,
Mm-hmm.
and when Ellie and Dina are out on the patrol and the snowstorm gets really bad,
Mm-hmm.
they in the game they go to this place, this library, and they find like you move a bookcase and Eugene had used to cover up these stairs, and down in the basement Eugene's growing all the weed, and he's got the gas mask with the bowl attached to it, and they find his firefly pendant, and so she knows that he's a firefly.
Mm-hmm.
And she, like, you write in your journal, like, did he know about Salt Lake? Maybe he was in contact with other fireflies. And then she's like, no, he would have said something. But again, he's already dead. He's
Right.
already gone.
Okay.
And I believe there are some comments either from Dina or maybe from Jesse about Joel had to put him down. But again, it's never explained. It's never expounded upon. It's just he, died, and Joel's the one that put him out, and it's sort of implied that he was infected, and Joel killed him because of that.
Right.
But we never see it.
Right.
We never see it.
And in leading into this episode, when Eugene had been discussed and we knew that he'd been killed, and and Joel, and even in that therapy session when Gail's like, I know you had to do it, but we speculated that it was something like this, like he was bitten and he needed to be put down, and because that's probably the only situation where you would kill someone because you had to,
Right.
So that being said, he did have to, but he didn't have to do it the way he did it. And
Yeah.
and it sucks because both of them are in the wrong. Ellie should not have promised to Eugene that they could go back to Jackson, that he could see Gail again. She shouldn't have made that promise.
Yeah.
But Joel also should not have made that promise. If anything, he should have said.
Well, he
should have said, we'll do everything we can to get you back there, but if you start showing signs, I'm gonna have to do what I gotta have to do. You know what I mean? Because we won't let you be. We won't take the chance that you could harm someone else, right? So if he'd been forthright about that, and I don't know, like, if he planned the whole time, or if he changed mid. What do you think he planned from the onset that he was going to put him down and just come up with a reason, or do you think he was in the middle of, like, going through the forest with Eugene and something happened that triggered it and he was like, okay, no, we gotta go. It's time. You have to go. What do you think?
I think he was gonna put him down no matter what. Okay. And that's why he told Ellie, you go get the horses, and we'll meet you. Eugene and I will walk down, and yeah, I mean, I think again, like you said, Joel's totally in the right here that, look, this is the procedure, okay? The dude got bit.
Right.
And there's no, he's going to, unless you're Ellie, you're going to turn. There's nothing to it. And I would point out, like, when man, I'm blanking on her name. The gal that was with Joel at the beginning with Ellie,
Oh,
when she got bit,
Tess.
Tess, when Tess got bit, she changed in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was very fast. And, Eugene is like, I got like an hour. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have like an hour, So, but I mean, again, and Joel, as he was saying, look, we have the rules are the rules. The procedures are there to safeguard everyone. We can't take you back.
Yeah.
And of course, Eugene's like, no, I have to see my wife. And of course, Ellie makes him hold his hand out and count to 10. And she's like, yeah, he's got plenty of time. And you don't know that. But again, she's a dumb kid. And so Joel, again, just bold-faced lies to her.
Yes.
And says, you go get the horses. We'll walk down and we'll meet you. And then we'll go back. And she looks at him and he goes, I swear. Which is the exact same thing he said and the exact same look he had when she asked him, swear to me that what happened in Salt Lake was what you told me was the truth.
Yeah.
And he goes, I swear. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so what my question is I wonder if Ellie decided that this is how she was going to test him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because, again, she kind of knew what was coming. She knew that Eugene was going to have to be put down eventually. And so if Joel, is Joel really trustworthy? Can she really believe what he says? Let's find out. And,
Right.
he fails, right? But yeah, that was my thought, was that all the way from the beginning that Joel was going to wait for Ellie to get conveniently not there. And then he would, find a spot where he could, put down Eugene. What did you think? Did you think that it was a momentary decision, or do you think he planned it?
I watched it a couple of times, and I'm on the fence. I don't know if he was planning it the whole time, and there is a moment where it feels like he made a decision there. First of all, as soon as Eugene was like, man, these cordyceps, they really make you cold. They don't tell you, I'm really cold right now. It means that they
didn't expect
that. That means they're taking over his body, and Joel knows that, so it's progressing. So you could argue that maybe things changed a little bit there, but I also feel like Eugene is an experienced patrol person, and when he asks which way, he's forgetting which way they're supposed to go. So, or which way they're supposed to get to the path. So he can't remember which way they're supposed to go. So he's starting to lose some memory. And when he says which way, left or right, and when there's a kind of a look on Joel's face, to me, I interpret it as he could have been making the decision there, where it's like, if he doesn't know which way we're supposed to go, then he's already feeling the effects. It's already reaching his brain a bit. So that's when he makes that decision. I've got a shot right here. I can either go to where Ellie's going to meet us, or we can go this way. And when he does, and Eugene doesn't even say, oh, this isn't the right way. He's just like, this is so beautiful.
No. Yeah, they walk out and they're like, got this beautiful vista of the mountains, and like they're right at the water's edge, and he's just like, wow.
And it really is. I mean, with the mountains and the forest and everything. I mean, if you've never been, I've been to Jackson, Wyoming before when we went to Yellowstone, and it is beautiful, beautiful country up there. So they did a good job showcasing, the outdoors for this part of the series, and it does not disappoint. I could totally imagine that happening in that area and having that kind of reaction. So yeah. And
then I think Eugene kind of realized too.
Yeah.
what was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And then Joel's like, don't turn around. And then he's like, if you have any last words, I'll pass them on. And of course, Eugene's like, I don't have last words. I want to hear her last words,
Yeah.
and he's like, I want to see her again. And then Joel says that great line of, you can always remember the face of people you
Yeah.
love.
You can always
And
see them. Yeah.
Eugene then just kind of, he stares off into this beautiful vista, and then literally he goes, I can see her. And then, I thought this was a real nice touch by Druckmann. It cuts to that drone shot, and you don't hear the gunshot. You just see all the birds,
Yeah.
take off from the trees.
I loved that. That was just such a great choice. Such a great choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, Ellie comes in, and I mean, she just has this look of like betrayal.
Yeah.
That like, oh my God, how, you told me, you gave me your word, you swore that you wouldn't do this, and you did it anyway. And Joel is, again, totally misreading the room, right? Because he's like, okay, so I'm gonna radio ahead what happened, and then we'll get Gail, and we're just gonna tell her what she needs to know,
Because that's the right thing to do. Yeah.
That's because that's the right thing to do. And Ellie just, again, is like in like shell shock. I mean, she's just beside herself, right? She doesn't respond at all. And so they get back, and Joel weaves this incredible story, right? That, he was bit, and, he took his own life because he knew that he was going to turn, and he was brave to the very end, right? All this stuff. And Gail is like hugging him and like, oh, thank you, and then Ellie just lets him have it with both barrels.
Ugh.
Right.
Yeah, she does.
Just goes, he lied to you. He lied to me. We were going to bring him back, and Joel said he was going to bring him back so you could talk to him, and then he just shot him dead.
Yeah.
And Joel is looking at her like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And again, I think this kind of gives us a little more insight into why Gail, and I'm going to use air quotes here, hates Joel.
She's got a good reason.
She does, right? She does. And again, I mean, I firmly believe he's in the right in that, look, we can't bring him back. We can't try to bring him back. Because like you said, he's going to turn halfway, and then what if he bites me?
Right.
I mean, Ellie, he can't necessarily kill by a bite, but what if he injures Ellie somehow? You know what I mean? I mean, it's just, we have to put him down, and Ellie is being very, emotional and saying, no, we can totally, no. But to then get torpedoed like that after you kind of, weave this crazy lie about what happened. I mean, oh my God, no wonder that woman hates Joel with every fiber of her being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh God, so, but a very important scene because it confirmed, I think it, like, when she sees that Eugene's been shot, that's when she realizes all of like her like worst fears about Salt Lake City are true.
Yeah. And she even she admits that she's like, you made the same face, so she knows.
Yeah.
It's if you made that same face and you lied like point blank to Gail about everything, like the worst part of the lie, he'd been doing okay, like he was like skirting the truth a little bit, but then when he was like, and he did it himself, basically saying that Eugene's the one that shot himself in the head. And I think
from behind, but whatever.
Yeah, but he's like, I think that's what put Ellie over the edge, because he was kind of like, he was saying nice things to make the, he talked about how much he wanted to see you and and etc. But then when he, when it came down to it, and and then when he's like, and then he did it himself, and I was like, oh, Joel, no, that was a big step over the line.
Yep. Yeah, you should have said, I had to put him down. I didn't have any choice.
Yeah, I did what I was supposed to do.
And maybe he could have even included the, he was starting to turn, because like you just pointed out, he forgot the path. He was pointing out that, man, I'm actually getting kind of cold. That's weird. You know what I mean? So clearly it was taking hold of him.
Yes.
And so, I mean, he wasn't, frothing at the mouth and charging Joel to try and kill him,
Yeah.
but he was definitely going over. So he's not, again, it's a real gray area, right? Because he's lying because, Eugene was still there as Eugene, but he was still starting to, have like the very preliminary signs of, going over and turning, So, but he doesn't, like you said, he wants to give her as much peace as he can. So he gives her the lie that I'm sure had been told 100 times before that to survivors of, you're, the person that died. Oh, they pushed us away and said, I'll kill myself because I can't, I don't want to risk it. I mean, I don't think that this is the first time this lie's ever been pulled out of the bag.
Yeah.
It's just Ellie is just so angry with Joel that she's just like, yeah, that's a lie. It's not true.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, Ellie, shut the hell up. It's like, oh, what are you doing, kid?
I know. And in that moment, it didn't matter that everything she was saying just like destroyed Gale. She had to make sure that Joel didn't get away with telling such a destructive lie again. And she accuses Joel later of being selfish, but in this moment she was selfish because it didn't matter to her that Gale was there. She had to let Joel know, and she had to tattle, I guess, and say that he was just like full of shit pretty much. So yeah. Well, I like you said, she's letting him know that she knows that he's full of shit. Yes.
And although without kind of cluing in the whole Salt Lake story yet, but just sort of like, I'm on to you. I know, this was a test and you failed,
failed miserably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, what a scene. And the very next scene is the New Year's Eve party.
Yes.
And we see
back to that stupid dance.
Yeah, and we see everything from Joel's perspective. I'm sorry. My bad. Not Joel. Uncle Grumpy's perspective.
Uncle Grumpy's perspective. Yes.
What a great nickname. And it all plays out exactly the same way, but you see that he's watching, he sees Dina dancing, he sees Ellie over with Jesse, he sees, then it's Dina and Ellie dancing, then it's Seth being a dick, and he's immediately, like, as soon as he hears it, he's just up and across the room, and it's funny because, like, in that moment, he was like, just sitting and relaxing and sort of enjoying the party. And not only that, but he was having this nice scene with Maria. Tommy was there with their little one, and he's like, oh, I'm bringing him to bed. And they have like a, I'll see you next year moment, which is cute. And and I'm not sure if they didn't see each other when they went out on the patrol the next day, then that's his last time seeing Tommy, if you think about it. Because it's the next day that they go out on the patrol.
It's possible that he saw him leave for patrol, but again, we don't see it.
Yeah.
And in the game, Tommy and Joel are on patrol together,
right.
So it's a little different in the game. But I mean, Marissa has this great little moment where she says, I called you a refugee,
Maria.
and it came out different than I want. I'm sorry, what did I say, Marissa?
Yeah,
Maria. And she's like, I came out different than I intended it to, and you're important not just to us, but to everyone. And then she says, you're family. Yeah. Uncle, even if you're Uncle Grumpy. And so again, it was a very nice little moment between them that you're like, oh, okay, that things are better. They're improving between Joel and Tommy and his wife and all that. And then Seth gets up and decides to start pontificating on Dutch aquatic structures.
Exactly.
And then things go from bad to worse. And we kind of see that whole scene, right, where Dina's like, sorry, sorry,
Yeah.
you know, and then he's like, this is a church, you know, damn dyke, and then Joel comes, like you said, comes charging over, pushes him, and then Ellie just lays into Joel,
Yeah.
right, and is like, you know, what is wrong with you? I don't need your forking help, and you know, he leaves, right, and we kind of go from there to he goes back to the porch and gets out, it's Ellie's guitar, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like strumming it, thinking about it, and then he sees her, like we have seen, kind of walk home from the dance, and she stops when she sees him on the porch, and then she just, you know, kind of glares for a second and then just walks right on by back to the garage.
Right.
And that's where we think it ends, right? And Ellie has told Gail that, you know, I should have gone and talked to him, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, so the last moment we've been led to believe between the two of them was one of anger. And you know, now we find out technically that's not true.
Yeah. Which is that scene was like everything you needed to like soothe your soul about everything with Joel and Ellie. To know that when he dies less than 24 hours later, she's devastated because she left it with like, I mean, there was still anger. She did not forgive him. She did not like,
No.
you know, they didn't embrace or anything like that. She just made her promise, you know, that she'd like to try and but everything else that, you know, she does learn the truth. And I was worried that she would find out the truth like, you know, some other way. She overhears a conversation between like Joel and Tommy or something like that, you know, you know, and maybe it was like, I was thinking about like, how would she ever find out? In my brain, I put together a scenario where she overhears Joel and Tommy talking, and he mentions Eugene's a Firefly, and oh my God, we got to find out, does he know anything about what happened? Because, you know, he could say something to Ellie and that could just screw everything up, or blah, blah, blah. Like, I thought maybe she could overhear like a conversation, but for her to ask him point blank and for him to admit it, and he didn't just admit it, he admitted it and said that he would do it again. You know, if he was given
Right.
the chance to do it, he would do it again. And she's like, you're selfish. He's like, I love you. I would,
Yeah.
you know, I made that choice out of love. He, you know, and his whole speech he makes where he says, you know, you know, it's a kind of love you don't understand yet, but I hope that you do. I hope that, you know, if you ever have one of your own one day, and that's hilarious because, you know, she and Dina have promised her.
She
Yeah,
is.
she's supposed she's going to be a dad. So if you ever have one of your own one day, I hope you'll understand. And then when he says, and I hope you'll do a little better than me, and to have had that
Yeah.
bookend with the opening scene and then this scene, it's just, it's too much. It just, I was a fountain of tears this whole scene. And then for him to have admitted all of that, and then him know like it's the worst, because he says, and I know I'll pay the price because you're going to turn, and that's the episode title, paying the price.
Yeah.
I know I'll pay the price because you turn away from me. And
Yeah.
and he's even though I think that's when Ellie understands how much he loves her, is in that moment when he says, even though I know you'll turn away from me, if I had to do it all over again, I still would do it the same way, because you mean
Right.
that much to me that I couldn't let you die. You know, it just,
You're no longer cargo.
yeah. Oh, she's upgraded. She's special
She's
cargo
upgraded
now.
She's business class now.
She might even be first class. I don't know.
Yeah,
know.
yeah. It's it's an incredible scene.
Oh.
It really is. And you know, so far as we've been going along, you know, reviewing these episodes, you know, one of the things that I've been saying is that, you know, we never see the dance in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that the game starts and the dance has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
People are talking about it, but we never see it. Well, I was kind of fibbing a little, in that we do get a flashback sequence very, very late in the game. I mean, like super late in the game.
Okay.
We flash back and we again, I cannot tell you how the guys that made this set, how they just copied how it looked. I mean, all the strings of the white lights, and I mean everything about it, just it's so dead on. It looked exactly like it does in the game. And Dina's there dancing around like a drunk fool, and Ellie comes in and talks to Jesse, and then Dina pulls Ellie out on the dance floor, and they kind of smooch a little, and then Seth interrupts them, and then Joel. I mean, it's all of it happened. All of it happened. And I I wasn't sure if they were going to actually, go back to the scene on the porch or not. So that's why I didn't say that, well, it happens, but way later.
Yeah.
Because I'm really not sure of what way later stuff they're going to pull out of the game to put in here, because they've already done a ton of it so far. And so I didn't want to spoil stuff for you and be like, well, there's a scene where he takes her to a museum. That's really, you know what I mean? So I just didn't want to say anything. But we do get this scene where, she walks onto the porch and they kind of have this confrontation. And yeah, I mean, in the scene, the cut scene in the game is really powerful. But I mean, here, when she basically says, were there, other people that were immune, and he just kind of shakes his head no, and then she goes, could they have made a cure out of me, from with me?
Yeah.
And he kind of says yes, and he nods his head. And it's heart-wrenching, but I just got to ask, are you really sure about that, Joel? Did they really think, I mean, they were going to cut her open and like take a look and experiment,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think like they had yes, we know exactly what to do. We just got to get her brain tissue to do it.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? I think it's like, no, I don't think you can say with 100% certainty that, they would have found a cure. They could have.
Agreed. Yeah.
That was the guy that could do it. If anybody on the planet could do it, but I don't think you can be like, oh yeah, I mean, we would all be living on Easy Street if I'd let them kill you. No, it's like, but when he says, getting a cure would have killed you, and then that line when she goes, you took away my purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to think that like her whole life she's been told that like you're like the golden child here.
Yeah.
That you're immune, and that someday, because again, she was with Marlene and the Fireflies for a long time there.
Right.
And, they were saying, we're going to make a cure. We're going to use, your cells, and we're going to make a cure, and you're going to save the world, kid. That's what your job is, and she bought into it because, you're a kid and you do. And I'm sure she learned, yeah, you know what? I am immune because I keep getting bit and nothing happens.
Right.
So, it's like, clearly I am. And then again, for him to just be like, you selfishly stepped in and like took what I assumed was the thing that was going to give my life meaning.
Right.
The sacrifice that I would have to make. But I mean, I was going to save the world. And now, because, old man, you were selfish, that's not going to happen, and think about what just happened, right? If he hadn't have done that, maybe Eugene wouldn't be dead.
Yeah. Maybe.
You know what I mean? None of these people that in the intervening years that have gotten bit, they wouldn't have to put them down.
Right.
Because maybe there would be a cure. There'd be a shot or a pill or a drug or something you take. And, oh, look at that, I'm immune.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that when she says that line, like, you took away my purpose. And again, his response is, because I loved you.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, yeah, it made my cold, dead heart move a little bit too. So it was incredible, an incredible bit, and certainly changes, I think for me, it changes how we look at how Ellie is approaching this whole revenge thing.
Right.
Because she does, she tells him, I don't think I can forgive you for this, but I would like to try. Mm-hmm. So it ends like their last conversation. It ends on, I'm not going to say a happy note, but at least maybe there could be a positive place, you know what I mean? It's like not all bad, that she is at least going, look, you know what? You screwed up big time and you hurt me really, 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 really bad. But I'm going to try and forgive you for it.
Right.
I'm going to try and get past this because, you know, you love me and I love you and I can understand why you did what you did, even if I don't agree with it. And so again, there's like, it's like there's hope, right? There's a chance, you know, so you're saying there's a chance, right? You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
that's literally what it is. You know, she has a 1% chance of forgiving you. So you're saying there's a chance, right? So, but again, it adds a little more context to when Nora says, "Did he tell you what he did?" And she's like, "Yep."
Yeah.
And now we know, okay, yeah, you know what? He did tell her. Or she asked him and he confirmed what she thought that he did. And again, by the time she meets Nora, what does she say? Like, I'm okay with it, or I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
so it doesn't, whether or not she just said that to be, you know, because she was in action hero mode or not, it tells me that since Joel died, she is working towards forgiving him a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And it,
You know what I was just gonna say, what did you think about that whole, like, I'm gonna try and forgive you? Did you see that as lip service, or did you think that she really meant it?
no. I think she really, really meant it. Because I don't think she was expecting his excuse to be, because when she said that it was selfish of him to do that, she wasn't expecting that his response would be that he loves her. You know, she's never felt that kind of love before. She doesn't, you know what I mean? She's never had the love of a parent in her life. She's only ever had people sort of begrudgingly take care of her because they kind of had to. It was their duty. Duty. So, you know, Joel's family, and this is what family is, and I think him saying that he loved her is and that's what love is about, is doing that same thing, doing it the same way again, even though he knows she would turn away, it wouldn't matter, because saving her because he loves her was the more important thing. And I think that really sort of pierced through, and yeah, that I don't think it's lip service at all. I think she was committed to trying to. I'm not saying that she would have forgiven him. I'm saying that she, because of his love for her, I think she was willing to at least try, you know. Right. Not promising anything, but you know, like you said, there's a 3% chance.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All in all, though, I mean, just such a. And there is a little stinger at the very end, which after she says she'd like to try, you know, it goes to black, and I was really, really, really hoping that they wouldn't show her, you know, her in the scene where he's dead, and her, like, I just had this image later where I was like, oh, thank God they didn't have her, like, laying on top of him and saying, I love you too. Like, oh God, I would have just been like, that would have murdered me. But instead, you know, they fade to black and they come back up on the scene, and it's Ellie's gotten away from Nora and gotten out of that basement somehow, and she is heading toward the movie theater to meet back up with Jesse and Dina. So
assuming that they made it there.
Yeah, she's going there to wait for them or meet them or what have you. So you know, it's in the interim between where's Abby and smacking her leg to coming out of there, we got this sort of like flashback, like fill in the blanks moments here, and I thought it was a really good thing to be like, she was willing to try to forgive him. She didn't get the opportunity to try and forgive him because of what Abby did, which made the revenge even stronger. You know, you took away my, you know, her purpose in life would have been to go through life trying to maybe forgive Joel for what he did, you know, slowly but surely. And so it's just interesting that, you know, she probably would have wanted to kill Abby anyway, but it's almost like it's heightened more because she loses out on Joel, and Joel sacrificed so much for her to be able to live, it's just a nice little stinger at the end to remind you, now we get rage Ellie. She went from really sad and angry to like, I want to try, and then the very next thing is, all right, I'm ready to, wipe the earth clean of these motherfuckers, pretty much. She got that look in her eye. So, yeah, it was just a really great little, ending to the, such a great episode. Ugh.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is that it was like sort of like the magical escape, that she somehow gets out of the basement and there's all of like the other wolves you have to assume are like on alert because they were shooting at her in the last episode, right? And she somehow gets out of the building, gets out past all the patrols and makes it back like that. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, I guess we're just skipping that part.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe we'll get a little scene later that'll sort of tell us, how she got out, or maybe she'll describe it. So, but yeah, you're right. It's, it's always, convenient storytelling to not include,
yes, it's
magically she gets
clearly
out.
Nothing happened of import, so we're just gonna jump ahead, right? I mean, that's what they're saying, is that she did. And when you see her, I mean, she's completely unarmed. I mean, she doesn't have any of her weapons or anything. And I would point out too that both her and Dina lost all of their stuff, including Shimmer. By the way, Shimmer is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Shimmer, that we don't know what the last time we saw Shimmer, I believe they rode him to the TV station and then they climbed in through the window, right?
They left, I think they left Shimmer behind in that like area that had like grass and whatever, and then they went ahead on foot. I don't think they used Shimmer within the. So in theory, Shimmer could still be in that, like, near the record store when they sort of put her inside for safekeeping. In theory, but, I don't remember seeing Shimmer again.
They moved to the theater. You think they would have brought Shimmer with, but in any case, like all of their rifles and things, all that stuff they lost in the TV station and the subway.
Yeah.
I mean, because they have none of it. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much equipment now they have.
Yeah. Hopefully Jesse has an extra gun or two or something, so they can punch their way out of there. So.
Exactly.
So anything else that we didn't hit while we were talking these points that you want to jump back to, or sort of like put in some more detail or whatever? I'm taking a look through my stuff here.
No, I don't think so. I think I hit just about everything.
Someone said online, and I kind of believe this now, that in the previous episode when Ellie's on the stage and starts playing a song, she starts playing that same Pearl Jam song and stops, and you can see that there's the song upsets her, and now we know why, because that's the song that Joel played for her. I
believe that is true.
So yes. I saw that little tidbit, and I thought that was a nice, interesting little trivia piece there. So yeah, do with that what you will. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our notes on the episode. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, folks. When we come back, we're going to discuss our listener feedback and what's coming up on the podcast.
So everyone, please stick around, because we will be right back.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally going to get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the best of horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and apocalyptic entertainment. Aim for the Head. Available wherever you listen to podcasts. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Hey there, this is Greg Nicotero, and you're listening to Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots, they really just don't work.
Hey there, everybody. We are back. We're going to go right into our listener feedback for the episodes, because we got feedback on multiple episodes.
That's right.
So let's get started first with, we got some feedback from our pal Andy from Germany. Hey, Andy. Andy wrote in an email for us and sent us some feedback on episodes 4 and 5. It's a little bit behind, but he wanted to get his thoughts in, and we appreciate it. So he writes in and says, "Hi, Diana and Steve. Sorry for not writing last week, but I am so busy with listening to all the podcasts you are dishing out lately. There's no time left for writing." And he's not wrong.
I saw what you did there.
We are podcasting fools these days.
We are. We're doing 2 a week, people. 2
a week. 2 a week. Okay. He continues and says, "Number 4 was another good episode. I like how the wolves are depicted as hypocrites in 3 steps. First, Dina mentions their codex. Then the little girl that was killed because of a little hammer. Finally, Isaac shoots the defenseless prisoner. Their moral codex is worthless, and the voters are still not voting. Just the leader changed." There you go. And he says, about the Ellie was bitten scene. In the game, the glass in Ellie's gas mask breaks while the girls cross an area with spores. I don't like this scene, because in episode 1 of season 1, we saw a poster of Fedra. It shows the time it takes for someone who got bitten to change. It's 2 to 8 hours for a bite in the arm. Therefore, Dina would have known. She is in no danger. Is she in danger, though? I don't know. Continuing, he says, "I also don't like the idea of these cordyceps tentacles. If these tentacles would exist and stepping on them can send 5 to 5,000 runners at you, then no one would explore tunnels or travel around, since it would be much too dangerous." Yeah, I mean, he makes a good point, but a lot of times when you see people going through tunnels and stuff like that in this show, it's usually because they're trying to get away from something and they're not, like, it's not their first choice, you know. And even when they were going through the city, when they were in the train or whatever, they made it seem like that's not an area that they use very often. So but I understand his point. It would limit a lot of travel, for sure. He continues with his thoughts on last week's episode 5. He says, "Episode 5 was not bad, but just a filler episode. Quite boring. I was never worried about anyone. After all, I know who dies and who survives." Well, I know. I get that. I guess that's interesting if you know that from the game. It would take a little bit of the scariness out of it. He continues and says, "The showrunners don't have the balls to change something so crucial. I think it's also a problem that there is no group anymore one can sympathize with. I noticed a few details. Dina's controlling mom that made her want to be straight died when she was 8 years old. Isn't that quite young to have had such a lasting influence? ? Getting rid of the infected in the hospital would have been quite easy. They could have simply smoked them out with a truck and a hose from the exhaust pipe down the elevator shaft. Greetings from Germany, and Abby must die, from Andy."
Wow.
Yeah, lots of thoughts there. Very, very thought-filled. Yeah, I don't really know. With the getting rid of the infected out of the hospital, I'm not sure how. Truck and a hose, and I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the way to go.
It might work. You have to remember that it was like B level 2 was where the spores and the all of the stuff that we see was, because Sergeant Park said they went to B1 and it was deserted. There was nothing, not even like rats and stuff. Yeah. It was just absolutely empty. And then when they went down to 2, that's when. So maybe they couldn't make them reach. I don't know. It's an interesting idea.
I mean, I think it's an idea to come up with for later on. I think in the moment, though, it's airborne makes you want to close it off right away.
Seal it up.
Like maybe now that it's been a little while, maybe they could do something that might, I was actually thinking, I wonder, does burning help? Like would burning make the cordyceps go away? But he's right. You have to do something to get them out of the air, which is, maybe you have to wet the air or, run a, he said
shoot a fire hose in there or something.
Shoot a fire hose, yeah, something like that.
But yeah, I think what he's suggesting is, you put a exhaust pipe from a truck and you put a hose and pump the exhaust into the basement, and all the infected people will die from carbon monoxide poisoning. I think that's what he's suggesting, and I'm just like, I don't know if that would work. I'm maybe. We really don't know the.
But we're also, I mean, they're not really alive. They're kind of undead as it is. So would something that would traditionally kill a living person, carbon monoxide like that, would that even have an effect? I'm curious to see. That'd be
I don't
interesting.
know.
I don't know the answer to that,
It's a
Andy.
good question. It's a good question.
Yeah. Thanks for writing in, Andy. We hope to hear from you again next week with your thoughts on this current week's episode 6. So hope to hear from you
Absolutely.
next week.
Yeah, man. Thanks for writing in. All right, so moving on. Now, this is feedback for this week's episode for The Price.
Yeah.
And this comes from, of course, the one and the only Erica Price, which is how fitting. On the episode called The Price, we get feedback from The Price. This is a case where the price is right.
Oh, yeah.
So she sent this via the Facebook, and she goes, I was right. Daddy Joel is back. Kind of. He really pulled out all the stops for her birthday. This is the sweetest. And now I'm crying. Hearing his version of Future Days, and now we see why Ellie couldn't bring herself to continue playing it in the theater. Oh no, oh so emotional. Right? And so that kind of confirms what you had read on the internet about that was the song Ellie played when she was in the theater. Yeah. The look on their faces when they go into the museum, priceless. This is just what I needed. Wait, does this mean the finale is going to be really brutal? Please say no. Aw. And then she goes, he sprung for the chocolate cake. Oh, that backfired. That's true. When he catches her with the weed and the tattoo and the making out with the cat, he had the chocolate cake with the vanilla frosting that said, happy 17th birthday, Ellie. We're getting so many gaps filled in here. Her tattoo, the reason why she moved out, the fact that Salt Lake City really was on her mind after 4 years. Now Eugene, ouch. A bunch of fireflies, that looks ominous. Speaking of fireflies, maybe Joel knew Eugene was a firefly. Maybe he was concerned he'd take him back to Gail and he'd spill the beans about what Joel did in Salt Lake City in his dying breath. Wow, it was New Year's Eve. I love how they brought this full circle. From Joel's dad now through him to Ellie. We're all hoping to do a little bit better. I'm so glad they showed her returning to the theater in present day. No clue how she managed to escape. I know, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
She goes, don't care, just as long as she got out in there safely. They really knocked this one out of the park. How about a space pun? What do you get when you cross a lamb with a rocket? A space sheep.
I
So you're saying there's a chance.
I love the puns.
Awesome.
I love the puns, Erica. Keep them coming.
Yeah, keep them coming, Erica. I love the great feedback.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if they talked about this in the show, but in the game, when they're talking about Eugene. Either Dina says it or maybe Jesse says it, that he was in the Fireflies for like a year or two when they started and then he left. So the chances of him knowing about Salt Lake City is pretty remote. And I think Ellie and Joel know this. So,
yeah,
because he said there's some line in there like they like blew up a checkpoint or they kill the Fedra officer, and between all that violence and all the violence that Eugene saw in Vietnam, that he basically said, I'm done. I've had enough of just killing people. So
Yeah.
he left the Fireflies. So
Yeah.
so I think, and again, I can't remember if they covered it in the show. They definitely said that in the game. So and like I said, Ellie writes stuff in her journal in the game, and at one point when she finds the Firefly pendant of Eugene's, she goes, Eugene was a Firefly? Oh my God, maybe he knew about Joel and Salt Lake City. And then, no, probably not, or something like that. So
Yeah.
I think the answer is no. I think they kind of believe that he was unaware of anything that they did at Salt Lake City.
Right. Yes. Yes, I agree. And they did talk
Yes.
about it. They talked about it a little when they found his little lair, when Jesse and
I think so in the show when Jesse and Ellie find the 7-Eleven with all the weed growing
stuff. Yeah, they talked about it there.
I think
because she finds
right,
his
yeah.
Firefly thing, and they talk about it, and that's when Jesse's like, yeah, he was only a Firefly for a little bit of time, and he got out because he was tired of killing people.
Right. And again, like I said, in the game, that it's not a 7-Eleven, it's this library, and it's not Jesse and Ellie, it's Dina and Ellie. And yeah, so a little same basic stuff, just a little bit, they changed just a little bit for the show. So anyway, thank you, Erica, for writing in. It's so great.
Of course, as always, Erica, and hope to hear your thoughts next week on oh my God, next week.
Speaking of next week,
hey,
what's the title in the description there?
No idea. And I wonder why they're keeping it under wraps. Is it because it's the season finale already?
No!
And I cannot believe we're already here.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, we were like counting the weeks until it got here, and then it got here, and now it's
pretty much
already.
gone.
But what's interesting is I saw an article today where they're talking to Craig Mazin, and he's talking about like the balance of the story that's in the part 2 of the game, and he's talking about like getting things done. And he made some comment about not being able, he's not certain they'd be able to finish the story in season 3. And he said, and I quote, but we hope to be able to have the opportunity to finish it in 4. So they haven't had like the, approved for season 4 thing yet or whatever. They already were approved for season 3, but it shows that, Mazin is not expecting to be able to finish the complete story by the end of next season.
Oh. I believe it. Yeah. I mean, the game, it is massive in terms of the story that it tells, and I mean they are barely begun what's in the game. I mean,
really?
Barely.
Wow.
There is so much more that I cannot talk about, but oh my God, there's a lot.
Well, it looks to me, I can't imagine they wouldn't be approved for a 4th season. So based on what Mazin said, we've got at least a full season and most likely 2 more seasons of us saying, overalls, and really that's amazing. I'd love to do that. I'd love to continue to say overalls for
that.
You figure it took them 2 years to do season 2. And they're just finishing now. So you figure 2027 for season 3, and then probably 2029 for season 4.
Bella's going to be like 40 when they finish.
Diana's going to be like 60 when they finish.
Oh, Steve will be deceased.
Don't talk like that. Yeah, so next week, season finale. We're very excited. We will still be recording on Tuesday, even though it's a holiday weekend. So make sure to set your DVRs and make sure your method of watching the show is, all set up before, you leave your house to go stay at some cabin for the weekend for Memorial Day. So get ready, people. We're excited about chatting about it next week. So I don't know if you're aware, but probably the last month and a half we've been talking about seeing Fury Road and talking on every podcast about how excited we were about going and linking to the show and oh my God, buy tickets here, and guess what, it was last week, so we saw it.
It was amazeballs.
It was so great. Oh God,
Yeah.
I love that movie so much. And
Yeah.
the thing I was struck by is, it's a 2-hour movie, and it really just the time goes by so quickly because there just is no dull moment in that movie. Even
Yep.
in those quiet moments where you stop to take a breath, and there's very few of them, but when they happen, you get these little quiet moments. They last for a few minutes. You take a breath, you're paying attention to this, very emotionally charged scene while they're taking a break, and then the next thing you know, it's balls to the wall all over again. It's just incredible. It's a lot of people call it just like one big long action scene, and they're not wrong. It's just incredible. I mean, I had a blast.
One continuous chase.
Yeah, I had a blast, and I'm pretty sure you did too. How did you feel
Oh
about
my God.
going
It
to
was
see
amazing.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
it was,
much fun.
I was just very excited for you because this was your chance to see the unfortunately it wasn't a film print. It was just a 4K digital presentation. But I mean, oh my God, it looked amazing.
Yeah.
And just to, I was so happy for you that you got to experience it, in the big theater,
Yes.
with the movie popcorn and just having a ball. And it was so obvious. You were just so enthralled the whole time. Every once in a while, I'd kind of look over at you and I'm like, yeah, likes it.
Yeah, likes it. I was so like tickled pink the entire time, even, it just goes to show like when a movie is that good and you love it so much, all the scenes that and the lines that and everything happening, and it just is elevated. It just was, it was so great. I had such a blast.
It was. And we should point out that after the show ended, Miss Diana correctly answered a trivia question.
Yeah, pretty quickly. When he does these trivias, and Nick usually has he'll have like a handful of T-shirts, and he'll have like gift cards for the movie theater and things like that. Never anything huge or whatever, but he comes up with questions off the cuff. He doesn't really
Just right off, yeah.
It's random.
Yeah.
So the one I got right was when he asked what movie did Charlize Theron win
the
her
Oscar.
Oscar for, and he was like, he started the question. He was like, Charlize Theron has won an Oscar, and he went,
Hand
what?
up.
He literally said what, and my hand was in the air.
Yep. And
what's-
you got it. You nailed it, baby.
I did. And then he later was going to ask a question about Nicholas Hoult, plays Nux in the film. And he was like, Nicholas Hoult was, famously in a very well-known, a movie that was based on a well-known book. And he literally was like looking for the title of and like my hand was in the air immediately. Nobody else's hand was up, and he was like, "You already won."
Nope.
And
yeah,
I'm like,
I can't pick it.
but I'm like, I'm being chastised for my movie knowledge. And it's
But
about
I
a
know
boy.
the answer.
And it's about a boy, and if you haven't seen that movie, that's a great movie.
Yep.
And Monster, which Charlie has won the Oscar for, is also a fantastic movie with her and Christina Ricci. That's a fantastic movie. Yeah, we had a blast, and the trivia questions were great, and chatting with Nick a little bit before and after the show. It's always nice to chat with him, and and he gets to know people that come to events, and he knows your face, and so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, he does. And hey, next month, Doctor Strangelove, End of the World movie.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just gonna throw it out there.
Little Kubrick action. I know.
It's great.
So that's the movie for next month, and then it's Dazed and Confused, and then Bridesmaids. I think it's in that order.
Bridesmaids,
maybe?
yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I think Bridesmaids will be so much fun because that movie is so damn funny.
Yep. And then I think for Halloween for October it's Carrie.
Okay.
So we get Brian De Palma and Stephen King, and then he said what the December movie. The December movie is Batman Returns with Michael Keaton and Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer. So yeah, that's the Christmas movie. So yeah, so it's some really interesting older films that if if you've never seen them, here's a chance, and if you haven't seen them in a long, long time like me, it's a chance to go revisit them. So
Absolutely. I'm not sure if I'm gonna go to the ones coming up, but we'll have to take a look and see because. It'll be fun no matter what, because it's like even if you're not as like, I mean, because nothing will, come close to the excitement I had to see Fury Road.
No,
none of these would. But it's a fun night. It's a cute little movie theater. It's great. With construction traffic, it took me just under 2 hours to get there.
That's right.
Yeah, and then I got lost on the way home. Because I was, well, it wasn't lost. I was intentionally not paying attention to the GPS because it was trying to route me to, the highway, and I didn't want to. And I was like, this does make sense. I could just take Lake Street, it'll go straight to 20 and blah, 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 whatever. This is totally boring our listeners. I'm so sorry. So
you're saying that you were non-school oriented?
Yes, I am non-school oriented in that moment. So okay. I was ignoring the GPS, but I did it for too long. I ended up going too far north. But that's fine. I added about 30 minutes onto my drive, and when you're going to get home at, 11:30, quarter to 12, and you end up getting home at 12:15, 12:30 on a school night, I was not a happy camper the next morning.
Not a happy camper.
Well, yeah, and then the next day I had to do, family obligations or whatever. So it was, not a good day to begin with. And then on top of it, it's, I was working on only about 4.5 hours sleep. Good times. So obviously the moral of the story is I'd love to go to movies again at that theater in Oak Park, and I'd love other people to go see it. But let me tell you, pay attention to your GPS, no matter what.
I was going to say, that's the moral of the story, is listen to your GPS.
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
I mean, when the AI overlords want to route you through the highway, listen to them.
You just say, okay.
Yeah, like, absolutely. Please, get me home in 30 minutes, not an hour and a half, please. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us this week, folks. Thanks for listening. We look forward to chatting next week. We can't wait to talk about the season finale, our thoughts on the season 2 as a whole, probably. So look for that next week, and make sure to let us know what you thought of episode 7. Maybe send in your thoughts on the season as a whole, how it compares with season 1 over season 2. We'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that. But we look forward to chatting again next week. And until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they just don't work.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
I'm not chomping at the bit to talk about Dead City.
Oh, it was so good. What are you talking about?
I see how your voice went up there. I don't believe
it went up there.
It just went into
Sometimes when you're talking, you sound like you're asking a question.
It just doesn't sound like you're telling the truth.